All right, so I guess we got about 20 people here. So welcome everyone to another edition of Plant Talk. So today we have Dr. Melissa McCartney doing some wonderful work trying to bring botany back into the lives of students and those around us. And so I guess I'll hand it off to you, Melissa.
Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I'm going to start by admitting that I am not a botanist. I am trained in neuroscience. And after grad school and postdoc, I got into more education and outreach kind of work, which is what brought me back here to FIU, where now I do education research in the biology department. So that is how I ended up in charge of a plant project. And I would just ask for this talk that those of you who are trained in botany and know more about plants than me to just give me some grace if I say things wrong or use some incorrect terms. I am also learning, we're going to talk about plant blindness today, and I am overcoming plant blindness myself as we work through this project. So this is a project I've done in collaboration with Javier Ortega in the biology department and Hong Liu in earth and environment. This was kind of their idea that they work on with Nicole in the biology department and also Jonathan, where they decided to start giving tours to the General Bio 2 students of Fairchild Tropical Garden to kind of supplement the botany that they are teaching and learning in Gen Bio 2. So that's the focus of what I'm going to talk about today. And for another full disclosure, I have actually never taken a tour. So I have done the research and data analysis side of this project. But Nicole is here, who has delivered hundreds of tours. So if there are questions or comments about the tours themselves, I'll hand it over to Nicole to answer those. But what I'm going to do with this talk today is walk you through this paper that we published last summer. The reference is down here. It was published in Bioscience. If anybody wants a copy of the paper, please email me. I'm happy to send you a copy. So I'm going to walk you through today a little bit about the tours and what they look like, and then the data that we've collected through these tours, what we think it's telling us, and our next steps along the way. And then the other names here on this paper, Jessica, Simone, and Ativ, they were undergraduate biology students who worked with me on this data analysis. And because it will be relevant later, Jessica is going to medical school. Simone is actually, she was working on a master's in ecology, but she just decided to turn that into a PhD. And Ativ is currently applying to medical school. So with that, we'll go ahead and walk you through this paper. So I want to start by talking about plant blindness and what plant blindness is. Listed here on this slide is the official definition from this Wandersee and Schussler paper from 1999. But really what it is just people overlooking plants. And this happens across all levels of schooling and throughout the general public. But people tend to focus on animals and humans and less so focus on plants. And that is a huge problem for a lot of reasons. And we specifically here at FIU, we are focusing on undergraduate students and what can we do at the undergraduate level to start mitigating and alleviating some of this plant blindness. And I also want to bring up that plant blindness has recently been renamed with the idea of blindness being, like a loss of function, where that's not really what's happening here when people overlook plants. So there has been a suggestion recently by Catherine Parsley, who about 3 weeks ago just defended her PhD on her work in plant education. And she has proposed that we instead start calling it plant awareness disparity with this nice acronym of PAD. So we are trying to adopt this nomenclature and spread it and get it more widespread, but it is going to take some time to, everyone to change over from plant blindness. So I'll probably use both terms interchangeably through the talk, because our paper was published before her paper came out. So sometimes it's going to say plant blindness, but where I can, I'm going to start using PAD. So what does PAD look like here at FIU? So before I came to FIU, Javier had started these general tours through Gen Bio 2 courses, where he takes a group of students over to Fairchild Garden, and they walk through the garden, and they learn more specifically about the plants that they are learning about in Gen Bio 2. So here are some other FIU colleagues who were involved at various levels of these tours throughout the year. So that would be Nicole, Jonathan, Wendy, John Geiger, Brett Jestro, and Chad and Roberto and Janelle and Jose. All of them together have worked very hard delivering these tours to, at this point, I think thousands of students. And so I would like to credit them with really getting this off the ground. And this, what I'm showing you here now, comes from a publication in the Fairchild Garden magazine that Javier wrote. And it basically walks you through how they devised the tours and what the tours look like and what they're trying to provide students through these tours. So again, I am not really involved in this side of the project, so I'm going to skim over this pretty quickly, but Nicole is here if people have questions at the end. So there were three main things that they wanted to do with these tours. First, they wanted to cover a limited scope of plant examples. So the idea was, if we only cover a couple plants, but go into them very detailed, this might give students a deeper understanding of botany, why botany is important, and why we should pay attention to botany. The second part of this was to follow a critical thinking approach. So have these tours contain sections where students are asked questions that don't necessarily have one answer or have a correct answer, and have students really start engaging with botanical ideas and botanical concepts at more of a critical thinking level. And then the third part is also to bring in this idea of exceptions to the biological rule. So things that you might normally teach through genetics or with an animal example, why don't we do that with plants? And doing that with plants on this tour is a great way to, to get students more, almost kind of like a hook to get them more thinking about botany and more interested in botany. So those are the tours. They took about 2 hours. They happened on the weekend, and students were given extra credit if they went and took a tour. And so what my team, what were we interested in? What are we trying to measure? What kind of data are we trying to collect with the students who engage in these tours? So what's here in blue are two of those definitions from the original plant blindness paper from 1999. And we asked questions specifically relating to these definitions. Our first one was, does participating in a botanical experience enable students to better recognize the importance of the study of plants in human affairs? And for us, this really came down to careers. If students take these tours and they learn a little more about botany, are they better able to connect botany to their majors and to their careers? And on one level, this is a kind of crazy question, right? Because these are biology majors. Like, of course, they should be connecting botany. But the problem stems with more of the career side of this, is that the majority of our students want to be doctors. They're focused on humans, they're focused on human health, they're focused on human issues. And they really tend to overlook plants and how plants play into that. So we're very focused on the career aspect. Can any part of this tour, change students' minds that they don't have to be a botanist, but botany plays into a lot of these career choices that they're about to engage with. And then our other two research questions was, does participating in a botanical experience enable students to appreciate the aesthetic and unique biological features of plants? So part of plant blindness, or PAD, is that people, one of the definitions is that people see plants just as green blobs in the background. So we wanted to get more into this, like, can we get students to appreciate that plants are unique, plants are, individual organisms, and that they are important as part of the larger ecosystem. And then very simply, we were just wondering if students go on this tour, are they more likely to think about and notice plants in the future? So these are the three main research questions that my team collected data on. So here, this table comes from our paper, but this is just showing you the students that we were working with. So we collected data for 3 semesters, a full year of data. We did summer, fall, and spring from 2018 to 2019. In total, we had about 1,300 students take Gen Bio 2 that year, and those are the students we were sampling from. In total, we had just under 500 students take the tour over that year's time, which worked out to about 37% of students. So out of all our Gen Bio students, just roughly a third of them participated in the tour. And those are the students we were really focused on collecting data from. So I'm going to show you the easy data first. We asked a couple questions on a Likert scale. So a range of 1 to 5, with 5 being they really agreed. So being the highest score and 1 being the lowest. And this is easy data because it's easy to analyze, it's easy to do statistics on. So I'll walk you through what we asked them. And the data I'm about to show you now is only for the students who participated in a tour of Fairchild Garden. So we first asked them, how do you feel about botany in general? The black bar on the left is pre, and the gray bar on the right is post semester. So somewhere between these two measurements, they took a tour. And what you see here is excellent. They definitely, they feel better about botany after the tour than they did at the beginning of the semester. We asked them, is botany relevant to your major? And yes, great, that increased. Still a little disappointing that these are biology majors and they're still only at about a 3.5 out of 5 as connecting botany to their major. But it's an increase, that's what we wanted, and we got it. Is botany relevant to your chosen career path? So again, this is what we were really the most interested in this piece of data. And we saw a significant increase of students being able now to connect botany to most likely some kind of career in medicine or the health sciences. In this next question I'm about to show you, the coding on it is flipped, and this is my fault. I entered it into Qualtrics backwards for some reason. But for this next set of data, 1 is the high score, 5 is the low score. So a decrease is actually a positive thing in this situation. And so we asked students, how often do you stop and notice a plant? And we did see a significant decrease, which is great. It means that after these tours, they are stopping and seeing plants more often. So this is what we see with the students who took the tour. This is what we see with the students who didn't take a tour. None of this is significant. And if anything, students who didn't take the tour are tending to decrease in the 2 categories we're most interested in, which is it relevant to your major, and is it relevant to your career path? So taken together, this definitely makes us confident that something's happening on these tours that is changing students' perception of botany. So now the question is, okay, what's happening on the tours? So to get more into that, what we did was we asked some short answer response qualitative data. So we asked students an open-ended question, and they free wrote what was ever in their head at the time they read that question. So altogether, for those 3 semesters, we looked at about 1,500 short answer responses. So this is a giant, huge data set. And I'm going to walk you through how we analyze this data just to give you an understanding about what this kind of qualitative analysis entails. Oops, lost my pointer. There we go. Okay. So myself and my team of undergraduates, Jessica, Simone, and Ativ, we took all these answers and we went home and you read through them by yourself. And as you're reading through them, you start to write down themes that are starting to emerge in the data. So is there a consistent phrase students are using over and over? Is there a word they're using over and over? Is there a general feeling that you're getting from the data? So then we all come together with our own set of themes that we see coming out of the data. And then we share our themes with each other, and we try to combine and kind of nest all our themes together. So this is a picture of Jessica and Ativ. This is how we did this in the pre-COVID times. We would get together, we'd write all our themes on a whiteboard, and then we would start discussing, what themes should stay, what themes can be grouped together. And through that, we would we'd come up with what we call a master code book. So these are two examples of what a code book would look like. So the question is written out at the top, and then the themes that we see coming out of the data are written underneath it. And then this is what we would use to go ahead and analyze the data. And how we would do that was we would work in groups of 2, because you need 2 people to do qualitative analysis, so you can do the statistics on it. So one person would go home, we'd start again, we'd read all those short answer responses, and as we were reading them, we would connect the answers to the appropriate theme or code that they connected to. Then we would send it to our partner, and without looking at our answer, they would do the exact same kind of analysis. Then our software lets us run a coding comparison, and it provides you with what's called a kappa value, which measures the % agreement between you and your partner. So it also tags all the answers that you and your partner did not agree on. So what we do then is we meet up, we go through each answer that you don't agree with your partner, you talk it out, you figure out, should this really be coded here? Should this really not be coded here? And then we keep doing that until our kappa values meet a high enough % agreement. So we did this whole process. We did this 43 times for all of our data sets that I'm about to show you. And the reason I'm making a big deal out of this is we're about to fly through these tables in a couple minutes. And I just wanted you to have an understanding of how much work this analysis really is. All right, so now I'm going to show you what this short answer data looks like. So the first one I'm going to show you is we asked the students, how do you feel about botany in general? And we had them do that Likert scale 1 to 5 question. And then underneath that, we asked them, can you please explain your reasoning for selecting your choice? So I'm going to show you results for that, but first I'm going to explain how we're going to present it. So across the top here, we have 4 different categories. So this is pre-course. So all the students in GenBio 2 took the survey at the beginning of their course. Then that subset of students who took the tours, immediately after they took the tour, we asked them this question again. Then at the end of the semester, everybody in GenBio 2 took this survey, and we split that data into 2 pieces. The students who did not go on the tour are in this column, and the students who did take a tour are in this column. And here's, let me show you now how this data is going to look. So in the, oops, not yet. Okay. In this column here, these are all the themes that we came up with for this particular question. So we had 10 themes in total. Then we took each response for that theme, we counted them up, and we divided by the number of total responses. So what you see in all these columns, these are the % of students whose answer connected to this theme. Now, if you're adding these all up in your head, you're going to notice that these are well over 100. And that's because sometimes students' answers connect to more than one theme. So a student could potentially say, I think botany is interesting, but I'm also not interested in it. And so that answer would get coded to both of those themes. Okay, so just these are % responses for everyone at the beginning of GenBio 2. And these are the themes that we saw coming out of the data. So here's the data all together. And what I really like about these bubble charts is it really allows you to see trends in the data. And it also allows you to see pretty clearly, what's missing from the data. And what I want you to keep in mind as we walk through this figure together is that we just asked students, how do you feel about botany in general? And they answered whatever was on their mind at that time. So we did not ask them, are you interested in botany? Do you think botany is cool? So there are kind of limits to this short answer data because it is kind of whatever students are thinking about in the moment when we ask the question. But I still think there are some useful trends that we can look at here in this data. And the first one being, so students reporting that they're not really interested in botany. This goes down like crazy right after the tour, which is fascinating and really, a huge compliment to Javier and Nicole and all the other tour guides, because students really leave this tour really, really loving, or at least being interested in botany. But the other interesting piece we see here is that the people who didn't take the tour, they essentially stayed the same, with the percent mentioning that they're not interested in botany. And while, this isn't great, students who did take the tour, 36% of them still say they're not interested in botany, but it's much less than where we started with. So overall, I think this is a really positive response. This data set also really interests me. I see why plants matter. This went up right after the tour, which is really great. And as you can see, students who didn't take the tour without any other, learning experience, they got worse than what they started from. Students who did take the tour, it does kind of level off to pre-tour levels by the end of the semester, but I still think this increase here is really positive. This one, botany can be applied to other sciences. That's really, when we're thinking about the career side of this, that's really what we want students to understand the most, right? You can still be a doctor and still like botany. Like, those two things are not mutually exclusive. And we see an increase here right after the tour. It does level off to pre-class levels at the end. But again, the students who don't take the tour, they're actually getting worse at this. I enjoy learning about botany. Again, that goes up after the tour, which is excellent. But I think this is the most interesting part here. The students who don't take a tour, none of them, not a single one of them, mentioned anything about enjoying botany on their post-course survey. And then this one I also really enjoy. Botany is easier to learn in person. It went up obviously after the tour, which is great. And we do see a little tiny bit of residual response to this at the end of the course, which means some of these students did really remember the tour, and they remembered, learning and thinking about botany while they were there. So overall, I think this is really positive data. Okay, I'm going to walk you through this chart, which is this is the best way we thought to show a lot of data at one time. And what we did here was we basically pulled out example students that show an overall trend of what we're seeing in this qualitative data. So this chart is basically in two parts. So this part here deals with the question, how do you feel about botany in general? And this part here deals with, is botany relevant to your chosen career path? And career path is really what we were the most interested in. And as you read across the chart, each one of these is an individual student. So for student one, we know what kind of career path they envision themselves engaging with. We know their pre-post Likert scale question, or Likert score for the question, how do you feel about botany in general? And we also know their Likert score for, is botany relevant to your chosen career path? And we've paired that with their short answer responses for each of those Likert scale questions. So these 8 students kind of encapsulate the general themes we saw throughout all of these students who took these tours. And I'm going to walk you through it. So one category was students who got more negative. So who were the students whose connecting botany to their careers actually went down, even though these students took a tour? And these, unfortunately, I think these are just the students that we might never be able to reach them. They might just be so set that they don't need botany, and it is what it is. But if you look at their short answer responses, especially with careers, this is a serious problem. So we have students in biology who took a tour, who want to go into environmental consulting, and they're still saying, because my future career has nothing to do with plants. So while we're trying to work on this, I see these as examples that this is still very real with our students. And I think we have a long way to go in really, explaining to them why you do not have to be a botanist but you do need to appreciate that botany is relevant to a lot of careers in a lot of different ways. The next group here, these are the students who stayed the same. So their Likert scale career pre and post didn't change. And I think we have a lot, I think kind of moving forward, I think this is the group we really need to focus on, because I think they're interested in thinking more about botany. I think they're willing to engage with botany, but for whatever reason, we just haven't convinced them that yes, botany is relevant to your career and you should consider it, as you move forward on these individual career paths. And if you look at what we see in these students here, we're seeing a lot, these are a lot of our non-medical students. So we have an environmental consulting, toxicology, and market analysis. So I think what this tells us is we have a pretty big potential here to figure out a way to reach these non-medical students and also convince them that botany is important. So I see this as a big opportunity for us moving forward. And I don't know if Hong is here, but I know this is also her biggest push with what we're doing with these tours, is that we have to get them out of Gen Bio 2 and into more of these environmental courses and some of the non-majors courses. And then the final group that we see here are the students who got better. So these are the students who increased their Likert score as it relates to careers. And what we see here, and I do not have any statistical relevance to show you here yet, but overwhelmingly the people in this group tend to be the health sciences interested students, which is really interesting, right? We are somehow we're meeting the health science students, even though we're losing some of those environmental and non-majors kind of students. But if you go through here and read some of these answers, it's wonderful, because some of these students who at the beginning said, no, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to work with humans. Now they're saying things like, plants provide us new medicine. I do need to know about these as a doctor. And some of them even go on to say, oh, plants also cause rashes. And maybe that's also why I need to know about plants as a doctor. So for whatever reason, we're still trying to figure this out, but we do seem to be getting through to the health science students. Okay, now I'm gonna walk you through some of these other short answers. And again, what we're asking, I've shown you kind of the career data. Now I'm gonna look at those other research questions, which was like, are students just able to appreciate plants more than they did before the tour? So all these tables are gonna be similar. The question is up here at the top. I've highlighted it so you can see it easier. The themes of what we saw out of all this data is listed here in the left-hand column. This middle column tells you the percent of students whose answers connected to that theme. And again, those are never going to add to 100, because a lot of answers would connect to more than one theme. But what we see here is great. Again, we want them to appreciate plants. Oops, I thought I could highlight this. And what we're seeing here is a lot of students in their answers are talking about, wow, I had no idea there were so many plants. It's amazing how many plants were at Fairchild Garden, all these different plants, all this different diversity of plants. So that's really great. I think we are getting that point across to students through the tour. Another question we asked, did this allow you to see botany in a real life setting? Because we were interested in, what's the difference between learning about plants in a book versus learning about plants at a botanical garden? And overwhelmingly, yes, this is insane, 98%. I've never seen a number like this with qualitative data. So this is fantastic. Most students really did get excited about seeing it in real life. And it changed a lot of their perception on botany. Okay, so this question, did the botanical experience allow you to see botany, the subject, as bigger than a classroom? And again, so we're asking these questions to kind of probe, are you seeing the aesthetic and the unique biological features of plants? And what we see here is really, really excellent. So 30% of the students mentioned that they have a new respect for plants in their answer. And while 30% might seem low, remember, we didn't ask, the question is not, do you have a new respect for plants? Okay, we asked, did this allow you to see botany outside of the classroom or as bigger than the classroom? So 30% of the students, just whatever came into their mind at the time included, yes, I definitely have a new respect for plants, which I think is really encouraging. Okay, this next question is, what was the most memorable moment of the botanical experience? And I'll walk you through this chart and how I kind of felt as we were going over this data analysis. So butterfly garden was the first and the highest response at 56%. And for me, initially, that was a little discouraging because the whole point of this was, see plants, learn about plants, touch plants. And most students were saying, oh, but the thing I remember the most is the butterflies, which are not a plant. But like I told you at the beginning, I have actually never taken a tour. And what I was told is that the butterfly garden is the last thing you do on the tour. So some of this might be residual, it's kind of the last thing students experience. It's what they're going to remember the most when you give them a survey after they have just seen butterflies. So I don't think this is as disheartening as I initially thought it would be. The next highest responses were students who their answer included either a specific or a general name for a plant, which again is excellent because that's what we wanted. We wanted them to appreciate plants, learn a little more about plants, understand the diversity. So I think that answer shows that we really did it. This one is the one that excited me the most. All these answers that came in about seeing the research being done at Fairchild, both in the orchid lab and just across the garden in general. I wasn't even thinking about this when we started the data analysis, but the fact that students came up with this on their own and they remembered seeing the research and learning about the research and being excited about the research. I think this is a really great, kind of surprise discovery that we made through this data analysis. Okay, so what's next? One thing we really want to do is expand these tours because I think this data I showed you really strongly supports that these tours are doing something. And while we're not totally sure, what part of the tour is doing what, or how all this is playing out, I do think we have enough data to say yes, the tours are doing something. And they should definitely be expanded. And we have a couple of ideas. One is let's just bring them to campus. Because right now, they are at Fairchild, which is, a premier place to learn botany, but we also have a lot of plants on campus. And maybe this is something we can be doing, as opposed to an extra credit thing on a Saturday where students have to get themselves to Fairchild Garden. Can we work this in more to different courses, different curricula that happen on campus where students are already there? Another expansion I would like to see with the tours, and again, I know this is Hong's biggest wish moving forward, is that we get them out of Gen Bio 2 and into these more non-majors courses and into the environmental courses, so we can start hitting those environmental science majors, the business majors, the English majors, all those kinds of people, because they need to know about plants too. Regardless of what you do on your career path, we are all citizens on Earth, and we are facing down severe environmental and climate challenges. And I think getting these tours out to a wide variety of students is really going to be key in helping us build a more educated set of voters who are going to, help try and solve all of these climate issues. The other thing we're doing is we have received funding from NSF for an RCN that we are calling Seeing Green. And we are a group right now of about 17 botanists, biologists, and educators who are working together to improve botanical education in undergraduate courses. This is us at our first meeting, which happened in February of 2020. We snuck it in right before COVID hit. So we did get to meet in person and start coming up with a plan and a framework for addressing more of what we're doing with the tours. How can we spread that across the country? How can we spread that to parts of the country that don't have beautiful botanical gardens nearby? How can we kind of scale this up and translate it to other places? And additionally, what we're doing as a network is we are currently collecting data on what botanical education looks like in 2021 at the undergraduate level. So I've just told you some of the things we're doing here at FIU. And what we're trying to do is collect what other people are doing all across the country. So this data collection is ongoing right now. It looks pretty positive. We have some really good trends coming out of this data. Unfortunately, I don't have any of it analyzed to the point where I can show you it today, but maybe I can come back in the fall and give another plant talk and I can show you that data at that time. Another project we are starting to embark on is collecting data on botanical capacity in the United States. And what I mean by this is all of these careers that require botany, what do they look like? And more importantly, how much of a need is there for a botanical workforce? Hong Lu she's about to head up this part of the project. And what her and her team are really interested in is because botany education has been declining for so long, there's currently not enough people trained in botanical sciences to go on to these careers that really need literacy in botanical sciences. So there's a huge mismatch here between careers that are available and the workforce that's trained to fill those jobs. So we're going to start collecting data on how big that mismatch is and how knowing those discrepancies is going to help us better figure out what we need to do at the undergraduate level to increase the population of the workforce that's trained and ready to go into those botanical jobs. And finally, we just turned in a full RCN proposal. So that would be 5 years of funding to keep these 2 data collections, as well as several other data collections that we want to start getting on moving forward. So if everybody can send us some good reviewer luck, we'd appreciate it. And hopefully they like our proposal, and we'll be able to keep moving forward with this. So that is all I have. I see the chat. I'll get into the chat in a minute. But I just want to thank my teammates here, everybody who organized the tours and implemented the tours, and then my own set of undergrads who helped with the data analysis. I'd also like to thank the STEM Transformation Institute. They provided funding to support the undergrads who helped me with all of the analysis. And then NSF has also supported our RCN efforts. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know how the questions will work. I guess, does somebody moderate or do you just want to yell them out?
Melissa, this is Gene here. There's a hint in in the data that you showed early in your presentation that that there's something like what is the term? Confirmation bias in that the students are experiencing in general biology too, if they don't have the botanical experience. In other words, they get out of general biology 2 what they expect to get out of general biology 2, and they come out of it without the botanical experience, even more focused and less oriented to plants than than before they took general biology 2, and that seemed very striking to me.
Yes. My best answer to your question is that's probably a very multifaceted issue, and we have not really looked deeply into how or why that is happening. My other answer to your question is this, well, I guess it's twofold. The students who took the tour do self-select, right? They're the students who are first interested in taking a tour, they're available on Saturdays, and they're able to get to Fairchild Garden. So yes, that came up in the review of our paper, and the way we addressed it best we could was just through statistics. So we did ANCOVAs to try to account for all of those confirmation bias. My other answer to your question is that this is an extra credit assignment. So students get extra credit to their Gen Bio 2 grade. And every semester we did this, we see more students complete the survey at the end of the semester than at the beginning. So I think there's a lot of students who are desperate for points at the end of the semester completing this survey, which is not, the best scenario, but I don't know a better way to collect the data.
Thanks,
Melissa,
Melissa. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
why is plant attention disparity a better name than plant blindness?
Yes. So I will admit, I am not the expert on this. Kate Parsley, who wrote that paper, she is in our RCN. But let me put that paper back up so you guys can get the citation if you're interested in going back and reading it. But my understanding is that blindness seems more of like a disability, almost like a handicap. And it's just not a term people want associated with learning in general. So plant awareness disparities seem to be a little less focused on the disability side of it and seeing it more as something you can acquire rather than something that you're lacking. But here's the paper. If you're interested to go read more about it, it's a short, nice read.
Thanks, Melissa. My favorite thing was reading the students' responses. As a reader, I think that was kind of one of the most impactful things, just to get their perspective. Of course, you need the statistics to give power to your arguments and whatnot, but I really like that. There was one that I just kind of wanted to point out that I saw. It said, I just see plants as plants and trees as trees.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the definition of plant blindness almost right
Yeah,
there.
we do get a lot of really thoughtful, inspiring answers. But again, yeah, I think they're with everything, right? Everything we teach, there's always a subset of students that we're just not going to reach. And
Of course. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is what it is.
And that when you point out like the person who was interested in environmental consultant and saying plants had no effect in that business, that was kind of amazing. But
yes.
I mean, thinking back as an undergrad myself, I mean, I don't think I understood a career potential or much of what careers entailed at that time. And only as a professional, I feel like I'm getting a pretty thorough understanding of how botany impacts a lot of careers. So, I mean, does any of that feedback into how the tours are given? Like, I mean, you probably don't want to change too much if you're doing a study, but do you try to tweak the tours based on responses and maybe try to say, well, all these careers, environmental consultants, this, and there's new industries and plant materials and bioprospecting, I don't know.
So I think I'm going to pass that question to Nicole. Nicole, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, when I first started doing the tours, they were pretty, standard what plants we were going to cover and which way we would walk through the garden and everything. But I know for me, I started adding in tours of the labs a little bit more and talking more specifically about my research with plumeria. And that's when we started getting the responses where students were so interested in it. And so I kept telling Javier, we really have to cover this and talk about things that other people are doing in this lab, because I think it really opens their eyes, and I get a lot of questions about it. Students stick around at the end after they've, done the quiz or survey and ask me more questions about it and want to get involved with volunteering at the garden. And so, yeah, I think we did tweak it a little bit. And it also depends on the group. The very first group early in the morning, they're usually way less engaged than the ones that come in the afternoon too. So it just depends.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, the real person connection, because you're part of that story that's actually happening that you're able to tell.
Yeah.
So that makes a big difference instead of just saying anonymous people use this for this,
Yeah, for sure. I also dropped in the chat the link for the video series that we did. So at the beginning of COVID, we did like a shortened version of the tours and put it up on YouTube. And then they integrated that into Gen Bio 2. I think it started in the summer last year, didn't it, Melissa? I don't remember. It might've been spring.
No, probably the summer, because when it was after COVID.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So those are all on YouTube. Feel free to use them if you want. I know Brittany's been using them in her ecology lab or botany. I don't know what she's teaching.
Anyone else with questions? One of my favorite comments I had to highlight is Elaine mentioning that the massive blindness in fungi and macroalgae as well, or just algae, you could probably say. So maybe we'll get to those groups next. All right, I guess that's it.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.